Welcome to Ending the Stigma, a path to recovery, a mental health and addiction recovery podcast show. Okay, everybody, welcome back to Ending the Stigma, a path to recovery with Scott H Silverman and me, Fredd Carroll. How is everybody doing today, and how are you, Mr. Silverman?
I am well, Fred. I've missed you. It's been a couple of weeks. It's Valentines Day has passed, President's Day is coming up, and we're already into February. It's almost, half over. I got a birthday coming up on the 20th. I'm going to be 68 years old. What's that, like 25 years older than you?
No, it's like 16. You're a full drivable teenager older than me.
There you go. So, things have been good and family's healthy, and it's good to see that seems like we're coming out of this COVID quarantine, and good things seem to be happening. I wish spirits were higher nationally. I wish mental health wasn't such a big conversation, but it continues to be. And I think you and I, on the topics that we want to talk about, and our guests have suggested we talk about, it's going to go on for quite a while. And getting help, seeking help, is going to be I think, an important navigational tool that we bring to our audience. And I'm real excited about this year. I think we're going to not only help more people, but we're going to be able to help more people. So I'm real excited.
Yeah. What do you think? Well, first of all, mentioning Valentine's Day, are you a romantic guy? Do you do well on Valentine's for your wife?
I do. I'm one of those guys that, whether it happened through guilt over the years, I remember one year I got my wife flowers delivered to the house for a year. And, it was special. Every month when the flowers would come, it would be a quick reminder. So am I a romantic? I like to think that I'm probably borderline romantic. I have romantic thoughts, but I'm not one of those people that, sits by a fire and roasts marshmallows. I'd rather go get a pizza and, watch Steven Seagal movie.
Yeah. Well, that's not very romantic.
How about you? I know you're a real romantic.
No, I'm a wannabe romantic. There's a difference. My mind lives in a rom-com movie setting.
Yeah.
But I rarely date. I don't date that much. I'm not a big dater.
Yeah, I think we all know that, Fred.
I'm just not. I'm learning quite honestly that you have to go out and find your dates. You can't, they're not going to knock at your door. So that's part of my problem is I lock myself in this room and I always focused on work. But that's not good for mental health either, because you should be dating. I'm a single man. I should be dating.
Maybe we can take a few seconds and do a PSA pointing at you as a single man that, public service announcement that, Fredd Carroll really wants to meet somebody special. And maybe you can even put up on the screen your criteria,
my stats, stats.
What your wish list looks like, so you can get people that will at least respond to you and lie to you. So I can't imagine what that'd be like in today's world. But it seems like digital, when I ever hear these commercials about all the different platforms that people are using, and I have two kids that I'm sure they want to settle down in their way, but so I hear bits and pieces. They don't tell me a whole lot. But I think there's ways to do it, and who knows, being a host of your own show and being famous like you are and with your new studio, who knows who might end up knocking at your door at 4 a.m, thinking it's 2 p.m, wanting to meet you.
You never know. You never know. So as you were talking about it coming out of the COVID turn and everything, what do you think, have the people that needed help seeked help while they were in COVID lockdown, or are we in for a bright surprise of?
Oh no, we're gonna see a wave of people who, now they have to kind of, confront things. Now they have to maybe go back to work. Maybe they have to, take a different level of control of their life that they haven't had for a couple of years, and relearn and learn some new things. And when or the money's run out and there's new stressors going on, or the untreated trauma from just going through all this, loss of a loved one, other things that have gone on. We don't have to go through the list. I think it's going to be a very challenging year, not a tough year, but a challenging year. And I think I hope we're going to see more people ask for help. But I know that California is really shifting a lot of different ways that they're hopefully, going to take our Medi-Cal system and allow people to kind of, go to their own level of support rather than rely on the publicly funded pieces, because they're overwhelmed, backed up, and there's people waiting in line. I mean, a person who has a problem shouldn't have to wait 2 months to go see somebody. They just shouldn't. And I think because of the wait and because of the new normal, whatever that's going to be defined as, we're going to see and then those will be seeking help. Then of course there are those who just are acting out inappropriately. There's another stabbing in New York. Was it yesterday? An Asian woman was killed. I assume a hate crime. Sounded like it was from what I heard. And that kind of behavior really, I think it's just gotten amplified over the last couple of years. So instead of slapping somebody or throwing water on them or calling them names or embarrassing them with some, slang, people are just acting out inappropriately. I was just watching on the news, they were talking about how some parts of the country are spending more time on mask bans and other types of bans, and then the gun thing is like, oh, that's Second Amendment, and you saw today in the news, Remington just got hit with a $73 million
here in Connecticut, and
law, settlement. So, and it's interesting. It's right, because more people are, and I just read yesterday, it was so funny. I don't know if it's funny, but a drug dealer was quoted saying, a drug user, I trust my drug dealer more than I do the people who are telling me about COVID. So when you hear someone make that kind of statement, that is just stunning. So I think that's the kind of mindset that this quarantine has created, that people are just seeking a quick fix. And I think it's going to work against us all for a while until we start to make better, more informed decisions about what we're going to do about how we feel.
Yeah, I think possibly, of course, we will never know this, or it'll just be statistics, but possibly for just as many people as we're going to deal with who are coming out into the world now, whether they're off their meds or not properly diagnosed and all that because of COVID, they were just home, that just as many people realized they had a problem these last 2 years and worked on themselves. So right. There are people that probably COVID saved their life as much as COVID is going to ruin people's lives. I think it's the way the world shifts and stuff, but it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, I still don't see any, especially with the fentanyl and stuff like that. I see, I was doing some research about China and the fentanyl stuff, and somewhere, I wasn't able to prove this, but I had heard on a news program that China has 70,000 factories that make fentanyl. Yet fentanyl is illegal in China. But then I came across a bunch that said China really did crack down on certain things, but with the way they're sneaking it through now is there's these underground guys that make the sales, and this is through social media and stuff, and they're just marketing it different. They're, quite honestly, they're just brilliant guys that are using their brilliance for bad things, which is very common. And, there's just more money in it, I guess, is the reason.
70,000, even if it was individuals making it, it's such a huge number. But if you took just 1% of that, and 700 places were manufacturing fentanyl, that is a lot. I mean, that's huge. So if there's somewhere between 700 and 70,000, I don't know that number. I will, I'll make some calls this week and find out, because I can get some good information if it's true. But even if it isn't true, if 80% of it's made up, it's still a huge amount. And because the consumer is just can't get enough of it. And it was just released a week and a half ago. I don't remember the name of the DA. Some DA here in California claimed, and this is interesting data because it comes from the arrest records, the criminal justice system, and the medical examiner. So it's hard data. And what they said was 80% of the street drugs that they are finding, whether it be through an autopsy or confiscation or through a drug bust, is cut with fentanyl right now. That is scary. And, you and I've talked enough about fentanyl, in our relationship time, and I've been talking about it for nearly 7 years. And to your point, that the manufacturing has, gone up 1,000 times. And when you think about it, and China had an interesting system that I heard about years ago about the way they're doing this, getting away with it. But you're right, as a country, they've also cracked down on it. But, you can get the materials on the dark web, they can manufacture it there, and anybody can get it shipped to their home.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem I kept running into in the research is, yes, they stopped the full scale manufacturing and sales and started arresting people and all that. But something like, let's just say, I don't know the numbers, I don't have them in front of me. Let's say it takes 7 different ingredients, if you want to use, to make fentanyl. 5 of them are legitimate legal things. It's the 2 that they eliminated. And if you know those 2, which is easy to find out, that's where Craigslist comes in play, and Instagram, and there's code and all these things that they're using that is all underground. But if you know these things, it is makeable.
You can go on the dark web and get the recipes. It's interesting because Mexico, from what I've learned over the years with methamphetamine, they had all these scattered facilities and did the same thing. And then they opened up these places, they called them super labs. And, when you think about that name super lab, what does that mean? Well, I've heard from people who have actually toured or gone in, whether it's undercover or an arrest was made in Mexico. And they talked about the super lab they walked through, and they said the gang walks, would be half of a football field crossing over left and right. So what they did was they centralized it, which gave them the ability to manufacture it at such a low cost, which is how methamphetamine has gone from $11,000 a pound to $1,100 a pound in just 10 years. So, and the cost is so low to manufacture it now. What they're doing is they're fronting it to distributors, street people, street drug dealers, because there's so much profit in it. They don't have to send somebody after if you don't pay. They'll just give you a call and say, look, we're going to stop fronting you this stuff. So there's this environment right now for people to make money on it, and for the manufacturers, of course, to just plow into this. And you know what? I don't care. Everyone talks about the war on drugs being lost. I agree. And other countries are starting to see more and more of it now. And even though they've had more restrictions, because once you get a hold of some of this stuff, which is, methamphetamine's 90% pure compared to 9% pure from 10 years ago, you get addicted quickly. And even if you're not predisposed with addiction, it's not hard. If you abuse it, it is so strong, your dependency on it can click like a switch.
Yeah, and then it looks like your body also becomes used to it, and you need more to get high and all that stuff. I mean, some of the things I came across were ridiculous, because you would think, why would somebody do that? But it's being done, such as taking fentanyl patches and eating the gel beads from a fentanyl patch. I mean, that's, I would assume, the desperation mode of it. But a lot of it is getting it from grandparents, elder people who are either looking to make some money because of the value of it and stuff. But the pipeline itself, they have that nailed down. And unfortunately, India now has taken a step into this. So the pipeline goes from China to Canada. Canada is a huge one. To Mexico and India are the main pipelines right now. And
those are the ones that a guy like you and a guy like me, with general information knows about. So, that there's, distributions going on. I mean, there's stories about containers, probably more before COVID, because containers are stuck on ships, but they come into a distribution point already prepackaged this was something China was doing. It would be dropped in some little town outside of like Wycombe County, Kansas. And in that container would be 3,000 small bags, half pound, 3/4 pound packages with people's name on them. And then they'd come to Kansas, and then the people who received the shipping container would then take those packages to the post office and send them off. And then the purchaser, usually through the dark web, using, you know, some sort of electronic money, because there's really no trail. It's hard to find and locate these people. Then they would get it and then either pill it up or repurpose it and then sell it. So, and I don't care how much we spend trying to protect the community, it's never going to be enough, and it's not going to be the way it works. People are just going to have to make the decision, you know, I'm not going to take this because I don't know what it is. I talked to somebody today in a high profile position, you know, and they were telling me that, you know, we have to get fentanyl strips for testing out and stop talking about Narcan, you know, and we've been talking about Narcan for a few years, trying to get Narcan in everybody's hands to handle the overdose. But the problem is that if people are going to make a decision to take something and it's got fentanyl in it, the odds are very high that they're not going to recover from that high. They're going to end up overdosing. So how do you, to your question, your point you made, how do you convince people to not take a poison that clearly has been connoted as a poison and put it in their body?
Yeah, it's honestly, even during my deep dive on it, it said there are people out there that think fentanyl keeps them away from being stigmatized like a heroin addict would. People don't look at, we don't talk about, we don't see somebody walking down the street high and say, oh, they're fentanyl high. No, we usually go to they're drunk, or they're a heroin addict, or a meth head, or whatever the word is, crackheads. But we never say they're fentanyl.
Yeah.
And
have you actually searched? I know you do research really well, and you get the right words when you're searching. Have you looked at? Have you gone to YouTube, and you know, like parts of Pittsburgh? You know, you see some of these cities where these guys are driving around with a camera filming people who are just bent over, nodded out, and most of it's heroin, and now it's cocktailing with fentanyl. But it's really scary about, you know, and this is in the homeless arena as well, where there really isn't a lot of disposable income. But, you know, as a homeless person, if you're willing to distribute for somebody and they can front you the meth or front you the fentanyl or front you the heroin's a lot more expensive to make, process. But think about that for a second. I mean, we just heard, it was just publicly announced in San Diego 2 weeks ago that the homeless population has doubled in the last 2.5 years. Doubled.
yeah, it's expensive.
You know, and we like to think of ourselves as a pretty progressive community. I keep saying that, but the things that are going on here aren't any different than most communities. It's just the numbers. I mean, we have 40 million people in this state.
Well, I think part of that is the weather plays a role. In other words, you can live on the streets. Can you imagine where I am, where it's 16 degrees right now? There's still homeless people here. Maybe not in my town specifically, but in New Haven. And getting back to your thing about the video, I don't have to go to YouTube. I could just drive to New Haven and watch this. And people like to think New Haven, when they hear New Haven, they think Yale University, you know, a distinguished university. It's a nightmare there. It's a zoo. They're just running wild in the streets, and there's issues, and you hear about it with Yale students and stuff, and it's not a safe area all the time. You better know where you're going, put it that way. You don't want to make that wrong left turn in New Haven.
Right, but cold climates like yours, normally speaking, the counties, the cities, the municipalities will say, if you want to be indoors, we'll provide a bed, because obviously staying out in those kind of temperatures, people die. And, you know, you're right, in California, I mean, we have 50% of the homeless, and the encampments, they just did another sweep here. It's so funny. We're going to sweep the Point Loma area and clean up the encampment. So they go in, they pick up 10 tons of trash. Okay. It's about 125 people in and out of this one encampment. And when I say encampment, it's like next to our sports arena. It's right next to a, a hardware store. It's not like, this big grassy knoll right off the curb of the street in a major area. And what they did was they cleaned up all the trash. They dispersed out all the homeless people. Basically, they went across the street, okay? Because the homeless advocates wanted to keep them in that area because that's where they knew the terrain. So they moved them across the street, and 2 weeks later, they're back.
Right.
The exact same spot.
Yeah, it's not their fault necessarily. It's hard to pinpoint exactly how homeless. I'm sure there's people out there that, yes, it's their fault they're homeless and they're to blame, or it's a consequence of something they've done. But for the most part, there's a mental health derivative that drives them towards this, and something that isn't getting taken care of, and there's not enough good people out there helping these people, because it's your problem. This is a California problem. It's not a United States problem, in the sense of, from the mindset of the people that are solving problems. They're going, right, well, California will take care of that.
And homeless people, people who are homeless, who have become homeless, whether it's happenstance, they made the decision, behavioral health issues, drug addiction, they're not going to fix this problem. I mean, it's going to require the community. It's going to require leadership. It's going to require people who are the change agents, and throwing money at the problem so far hasn't worked. And if we don't figure out a way, it's not only is it going to get worse, but the encampments you mentioned, they're going to expand. And then what'll happen is the store that you go to and your family goes to within your neighborhood, once you get these people in the front of the store and there's an overhang, they're not going to leave unless someone gives them an option to leave, or they find another way to find another place to live, because they're not going to do it on their own. I mean, as a guy that I worked in drug and gang eradication for 10 years, you when you're moving, for lack of better words, and I know I'll get smacked for this, but when you're moving cockroaches out of a building, if you don't eliminate them or give them options, and these are critters that nobody wants around, they're gonna run away, and then they get immune to the poison, and they'll come back. And I don't mean to compare the two, but when you get good at surviving in the street and you get accustomed to not being in a structured environment or having to follow the rules because you don't have to, you don't go back to a structured environment easily. There's a lot of support and case management and cajoling and building relationships and creating trust to get people to come back inside. And that's hard. And even in an environment like this, and and we think about San Diego having problems. Los Angeles just, so they're close to 60,000 homeless people in Los Angeles. We have about 10,000. And San Francisco is totally out of control. And people are leaving the city now. They're moving out of $3 million condos, $4 million condos, because they can't leave their home and feel safe. And Venice Beach, LA, they did that major cleanup for weeks, if not months. I mean, law enforcement, landfills, social workers, case managers, outreach people, detoxers, treatment providers, rescue missions, nonprofits, faith-based groups. And basically at some point, they got everybody off the beach at some point.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the money ran out and they stopped. Well, they're all coming back. Right. And now they're coming back in a vengeance, because each one of them that was displaced made new friends. So when they come back, they're coming back with their new friends. So instead of having 3,000 people on the beach, they're going to have like 9,000. And, summer's coming. And what I found also in the news, which is interesting, every time they open up a new shelter somewhere, they come up with this new concept. Like San Francisco had the safe injection sites, like New York. People hear this on the news and they're like, wait a minute, I'm over here in New Haven. It's 16 above. I can go to San Francisco and I can get free heroin delivered in my arm by a registered nurse. I got to find a way to get some money and get on the Greyhound.
Right. Well, I've asked homeless people when I do, because I engage with them if I can and I'm safe, if I'm in a safe area. Mm-hmm. And I often ask them, I try to put myself in their head, and I go, I figure I would, if I was homeless, I'd just start walking to Florida or south. That's all you got to do. You're homeless anyway. What's the matter where you sleep? And they say, well, the reason is because there's so much money here. They could survive on the streets here because they're going to get $50 a day just panhandling. Because, I mean, Connecticut is a wealthy state. There's a lot of money. And we do tend to, and I'm guilty of this, if somebody asks me for money and if I feel like that's going to make them go away, $1 from my pocket feels like a safety net, like an opportunity for them not to harm me or something. And I'm sure a lot of people are in that same, and it's not right. I shouldn't feel in danger, just like they shouldn't be judged for where they are. We got to figure out why they're there. We got to at least, it's another thing we're never going to stop. We're never going to be able to end it. There's actually people that are homeless that choose to be homeless. I've known people like this. It's a lifestyle for some people. And
I think it's a small percentage, to be honest with you.
Yeah, very small.
I've never met anybody who said, Scott, and I've met a lot of people on the street, living in these urine-soaked pants on the concrete, waiting in line every day to get a free meal or going through trash cans, unless they're really, really, really disabled, they're not happy with that.
No.
But, and I've seen a lot of it's just the structure, and I think I told you one of the newest drop-in centers here in San Diego, they opened up this day center where people can come in and get resources and meet case managers and get routed to housing. And they were open 8 to 4:30, closed on weekends.
Right. What it serves no purpose that way.
Well, that's the safe time of the day for most people. So they're not about to go anywhere because they can sleep during the day because they need their strength at night to defend their camps and stay alive and do what they have to do.
Yeah, it's something that I think about often is how to solve these things, and I rarely come up with a solution that A, either wasn't tried already, or B, just does not work, will not work, because there's a million ways to go about it, and it really does come down to the person. Just like the addict or the homeless person or the depressed person, they have to want to help themselves before
understand that the place they've gotten to, put themselves in, we put it, whatever it is, that over time it's not going to get better. And how would you like to take a look at other options and opportunities? Because they're talking now about mandating people get help, and going through the court. It's like you can't make people change in a way that creates more friction than it does fun, because most people don't want to be told what to do. And when you're already behind the 8 ball and you think the system's let you down, let alone whatever else is going on with you, it's hard to do. It's hard to do. Fred, we're almost out of time. So Tell us about your new studio there. What's going on there? It looks great.
Well, it's nothing major yet. I am investing into it, and we're going to invest into our show also, where we could be a little more structured, I guess is the word, because me and you are both very unscripted, because most of our show is me asking you a question, you answering, and then me getting a light bulb idea and hearing something you said, and we both have different strengths, so we're going to try to take advantage of those strengths and try to shorten some of our videos and try to segment some of our videos, be a little more structured so you know what we're talking about when. And I think we'll be successful with it. I mean, our success between you and me is measured by saving people, helping people. That's success enough. And of course, there is monetization that could always fall into play. And there's no shame in that either. We're not monetizing off of, directly off of them. This is just the world we live in. Everything's got a monetization. There's a cost to everything. Me and you have a bill for putting on this show. And as minimal as it is, it still comes out of our pocket. And we're both willing. It's kind of like a hobby that we enjoy at the same time, but we are talking about something serious. So we're going to turn it. But my studio itself is going to be meant for video. So I'll be moving more into the outdoors with camera work and stuff like that. I'm buying better cameras, better lighting, more green screen opportunities, maybe a few whiteboard stuff where we could actually draw and write things and figure things out. But it's one of them things. Long as the weather changes. You know, it was 60 degrees on Saturday, and we got 4 inches of snow on Sunday, and it's now 16 degrees.
Yeah, it was 75 here, I think, on Saturday, and it's the temperatures really dropped now. We're at 54, I think.
Yeah,
so,
I see you got a sweatshirt on. Yeah, you must.
Yeah, well, I'm here in my I call it the clubhouse, the shed. So there's no insulation in here, but I'd rather be, you know, my daughter's in New York now, and she says, oh my God, you know, she took me on, she went FaceTime, walked down the hall to go to the laundry room. She says it's like 18 degrees here now.
Yeah.
So why do you go outside the laundry room? Because that's the only way to get to it in this building, you know. And she's on the 3rd floor.
Yeah, and it's scary when you're in New York City. You end up, no matter which way you walk, the wind is always in your face.
That's funny.
It just follows you. But she's lucky. New York is a beautiful city to explore, to see the history of it. The safety of it, I think you're still safe there. But it's numbers. It's a numbers game.
Right.
And I'm sure she's a very bright girl if she's your wife's daughter. Not because she's your daughter, but because she's your wife's daughter.
Yeah.
She's extremely bright, and she will put herself in the safest opportunities to enjoy herself.
Yeah. No, she's great. And, you know, she's the kind of person like, you know, I have a nice purse, but there's nothing in it. So if you really want the purse, no, I want what's in it. Well, here you go. Here's some lip gloss and, you know, some breath mints and my subway pass, and you can have it, you know. So she knows how to handle herself pretty well.
Yeah, well, that's good. But okay, so that's going to end our show. It was a nice discussion. I'm glad. Always glad when I get to talk to you,
man,
on the show. But so we focused on homelessness a lot today, and that's a focus that everybody should get behind. And because it does. Listen, there are benefits, even if you're doing it for selfish reasons. There are benefits to solving this. One of them is your property, safety, creating a safe environment. Wouldn't it be great to go to downtown San Diego and feel like you can go for a walk with your wife, me to go to New Haven and enjoy all that great pizza because we're the pizza capital of the world?
You know, and we're a tourist town, which means if you know, people were shopping us 2 years ago to come here for conventions, and if they're afraid to leave the hotel to go to the convention center down by the water because of what's going on, they're not going to have their conferences here. And I know San Francisco's been hit by that, as so is Los Angeles. People are afraid to bring their, you know, once they come back out again and have their employees and their constituents coming to conferences, they're not going to want to come to cities that have this kind of issue. Yeah. So it is kind of a mixed bag.
Well, it is going to be a problem. So everybody make sure you are out there. I have another show, Apostrophes with Double D, which is a writer series show. You have your show called Happy Hour with Scott H Silverman. And that's every week, right? Your podcast? Mine's
you know, I've been a little sporadic this first quarter, but Michael and I are getting back to it this Saturday. He's actually going to interview me, and I'll probably have a couple rants. I usually try to get a guest in whenever I can, and I haven't really spent time on that. I've been trying to get my business straightened out and help veterans, and that's important too.
Yeah, and that's the same thing we've been doing. We haven't been as consistent as I would like, and we will get our consistency, but sometimes you got to do the background work to get to that point. You can't just throw videos out there for to say and hope people are going to see them. So I'd rather it be professional quality, professional sounding, and professionally placed. So you could find Ending the Stigma on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. I try to upload those weekly, and that's going to be it. So this is Ending the Stigma. I'm Fredd Carroll. You're Scott H Silverman. What do you want to say about you got a phone number you want to give out?
Yes, anytime. 619-993-2738. 619-993-2738. Call or text me anytime. I'll get back to you.
Anytime. And once again, I will say, if nobody has told you they love you today, we love you. I'm Fredd Carroll. That's Scott H Silverman. This is Ending the Stigma, and we will see you again next week. Goodbye. Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery is produced by Venom Studioz. Copyright 2022 by Venom Podcast Studios. The show is hosted by life coach and author Scott H. Silverman and author Fredd Carroll. Our intention is to reduce all stigmas and to provide information that isn't discussed enough. If you or someone you know has an issue, please contact your local authorities or substance abuse counseling centers for help. The suicide hotline could be reached by dialing 1-800-273-8255 or simply text the word HOME to 741-741 for free 24/7 counseling. Scott H. Silverman's information could be found by visiting his website at yourcrisiscoach.com. And to learn more about author Fredd Carroll, please visit www.venomstudios.com. That's Studioz with a Z. And remember, if no one has told you they love you today, we love you. This has been Ending the Stigma.